photos look like movie scenes, but every single one actually happened. You're about to see 35 historical images that don't seem real at all. Men watching the birth of the nuclear age. The photo was taken during the first atomic bomb test in New Mexico, when many observers still had no idea how dangerous the radiation truly was. No one in this moment could fully imagine how this flash of light would change world politics forever. In November 1958, these Republic F-84F Thunderstreaks were stacked in rows at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Arizona, waiting to be scrapped. Just a few years earlier, they represented the cutting edge of jet technology for the U.S. Air Force. By the late 1950s, newer and faster aircraft had taken their place. These jets weren't all broken. They were simply obsolete. The dry desert air made this the perfect place to store them until they could be stripped for parts or cut up for metal. Each one of these fighters cost hundreds of thousands of dollars at the time, and together they represent a huge investment in Cold War aviation. At first glance, this looks like a crowded train platform. In reality, these children are using the London Underground as a bomb shelter during the Blitz of World War II. At night, entire families slept on the station floors, while German bombs fell overhead, turning a transport system into a lifeline. This famous image shows construction workers casually eating lunch hundreds of feet above New York City, with no harnesses or safety lines. At the time, this kind of risk was considered normal, and accidents were rarely documented. Today, it's a reminder of how much of the modern skyline was built on raw courage and danger. This family turned a concrete culvert into their home during the Great Depression. With jobs gone and housing unaffordable, thousands of families in the United States improvised shelters wherever they could. The boys in this photo look like they're just visiting a factory. In truth, they worked 10 to 12-hour days inside this cotton mill, doing dangerous tasks that adults could not fit into. Child labor was legal and common, and it took campaigns and shocking photos like this to finally change the law. Two water fountains side by side, one marked white, the other colored. This ordinary-looking public space hides the brutal reality of racial segregation in the United States. Photos like this helped expose to the world how deeply discrimination was written into everyday life. Here, a young black student walks into a once all-white school surrounded by adults and cameras. On paper, the law had changed. In reality, every step she took was a test of the country's promise of equality. One small figure in a school dress carried the weight of a national struggle. These children are practicing duck and cover in case of a nuclear attack. Teachers were told that hiding under a desk could save lives in a blast. Today, the image feels tragically optimistic, a symbol of how people tried to live with the constant fear of nuclear war. These children are not in costume. They're practicing how to survive a gas attack. During World War II, gas masks were issued to civilians across Europe, and even schools held regular drills. The sight of tiny faces hidden behind rubber and glass shows just how close war came to everyday life. Here, a nurse proudly recommends a brand of cigarettes. For decades, tobacco companies used medical imagery and fake studies to claim cigarettes were safe, even healthy. Knowing what we know today, this one advertisement feels more terrifying than any horror film. These young women are painting watch dials with glowing radium paint, often instructed to lick the brushes to keep a fine point. They were told the paint was harmless, even fun. Only later did the deadly effects of radiation poisoning reveal how much their employers had hidden from them. This ghostly image shows a patient being examined with one of the first X-ray machines. Early doctors did not fully understand the dangers of radiation and sometimes exposed patients and themselves for long periods. The technology that now saves lives once quietly harmed the people pioneering it. This machine is an iron lung, and the child inside it couldn't breathe without it. Before vaccines, polio paralyzed thousands of children every year, and some spent months or years in these metal chambers. The calm expression on the nurse's face hides the constant battle being fought in this hospital ward. At first glance, this looks like a peaceful nursery. Then you notice how the babies are lined up in perfect rows under the bright light. In the early 20th century, doctors believed that controlled sunlight or artificial UV could help treat rickets, skin conditions, and general weakness in infants. Hospitals created special light wards where nurses would place babies under strong lamps or near tall windows for daily sun treatments. The idea was scientific for its time, but seeing a whole row of tiny patients arranged like this feels strangely clinical today, more like an experiment than a nursery. This baby appears to be dangling in midair, but is actually in a wire baby cage hanging outside a high-rise window. Some parents use these devices to give their children fresh air and sunlight in crowded cities. Today, it looks terrifying, but at the time it was advertised as a healthy, modern solution. This crowded pool looks like chaos, with dozens of children and only a few adults watching. In the mid-20th century, public safety standards were far looser than today, and accidents were often considered part of growing up. Looking back, it's amazing more days like this didn't turn into tragedies. On a frozen city street in the 1920s, this motorized snowplow is one of the only things still moving. Before modern trucks and heated cabs, operators spent hours in the open cold, clearing tracks so cities wouldn't shut down completely during winter storms. That lonely street lamp glowing in the blizzard makes it feel like the last vehicle left in the world. This busy street is not flooded by water, but by horse manure. Before cars, large cities struggled with millions of horses producing tons of waste every day. At the time, newspapers predicted that by the year 2000, some cities would literally drown in it, until the automobile changed everything. In this photo, a horse shies away from one of the first noisy motor cars rolling down the street. For centuries, the horse was the main engine of human movement, and it did not give up that role quietly. This awkward meeting captures the exact moment one era of transportation crashed into another. This entire house is rolling down the street on wooden beams and human muscle. Instead of demolishing homes, some cities simply lifted them and moved them to new lots. For the people inside, everything from the furniture to the wallpaper stayed the same, only the address changed. This woman is a pack horse librarian, delivering books to remote homes in the mountains. During the Great Depression, these writers brought education and entertainment to families who had no other access to reading material. A single saddlebag of books could change an entire valley's connection to the outside world. Before automatic dialing, every call in this city passed through hands like these. Dozens of operators connected voices by physically plugging in cables. The entire communication network depended on their memory, speed, and ability to stay calm under pressure. These women were known as computers long before machines took that name. They performed complex mathematical calculations for wartime research and early space programs using only pencils and paper. Their work made many scientific breakthroughs possible Even though their names were rarely recorded, these rows of desks are filled with people running calculations for the space race long before laptops and smartphones. Every orbit, every burn, and every landing depended on their pencils, slide rules, and attention to detail. The moon landing was not just a triumph of rockets, but of quiet math in rooms like this. This officer is strapped to one of the early polygraph machines, wires and ink pens measuring his reactions. Authorities hoped this technology could finally reveal who was lying and who was telling the truth. Decades later, we now know how unreliable it can be, but at the time, it felt like science fiction becoming real. These men look like they're wearing metal aprons from a blacksmith shop. They're actually testing some of the first mass-produced body armor, heavy and uncomfortable but slightly better than nothing. The idea of personal protection on the battlefield was there, but the technology was struggling to keep up. These three women aren't posing for an art project, they're testing battlefield camouflage. In 1918, members of the Women's Reserve Camouflage Corps, many of them trained artists, were recruited to help the U.S. Army make soldiers and equipment disappear into the landscape. In this photo, one woman has been painted and dressed to blend so perfectly into the forest floor that she almost vanishes among the rocks and leaves. To these children, this rusting tank is just a playground. The war is over, but its weapons still litter their neighborhood. For a whole generation, the ruins of global conflict became the backdrop of ordinary childhood games. This broken aircraft looks like a failed experiment, and that's exactly what it was. Early aviation pioneers crashed again and again while trying to conquer the sky. Each wrecked machine represents data, courage, and the belief that flying was worth the risk. This intersection looks chaotic, with people and vehicles tangled together. Early in the age of cars, traffic lights and rules were still new, and many cities were learning by trial and error. Every near miss in photos like this helped shape the safety systems we now hardly notice. This theater looks like a room full of identical masks staring at the screen. These are some of the first mass-market 3D glasses sold as the future of entertainment. For a brief moment, audiences believed this strange new way of seeing could change movies forever. At first glance, this looks like a gruesome crime scene or an early horror movie still. In reality, it's a Victorian parlor trick. Photographers in the late 1800s loved experimenting with double exposures and careful posing to create headless portraits where a person appears to calmly hold their own detached head. Customers paid for these bizarre images as a kind of dark joke long before Photoshop existed. The effect was created by combining two separate exposures on the same glass plate, with the missing parts carefully masked out in the dark room. It's a reminder that people have been faking impossible photos and enjoying the illusion for almost as long as cameras have existed. This astronaut in training is floating in a pool, wearing a bulky prototype suit. Engineers used water to simulate weightlessness before humans ever left Earth orbit. Every movement was studied, because one overlooked detail in the suit could mean death in the vacuum of space. Here, fuel is being sold out of glass bottles instead of pumps. In places where cars arrived before proper infrastructure, improvisation was the only option. One wrong bottle could mean a broken engine or a dangerous fire. Thanks for watching. If this kind of forgotten history interests you, there's another collection of photos waiting for you on screen. I'll see you there.